let's get going. Ross Saunders, with a 20-year background in technology business and specialization in technical operations, cybersecurity, and privacy, our guest has spent the better part of 15 years participating in distributed teams across the globe. Working with teams in countries such as the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, India, and Argentina, he's gained remarkable experience in both working remotely and keeping intellectual property secure. Please welcome privacy and cyber security specialist, Ross Saunders. Hello, Ross.
Hello, good to be here.
Good stuff. And I'm going to bang straight into the first question, if you don't mind. Ross, we're seeing an unprecedented move to virtual presentations as well as remote work. How has it evolved over the years to get to where it is now?
I think, where it started, at least where I started in it, is it was that good old meeting room with the Polycom phones, those big triangle jobs that you would dial through, and you'd maybe get through to Telcom or the local provider, and you'd have to put in random pins on the keypad and things like that. So I think coming from that, like you say, there's an unprecedented move, but there's been a massive evolution over the years of this. My background being in IT support, a lot of it was spent doing remote support for people's computers. So we actually had a team. I worked for a company called Nerd, and we were ahead of our time, having a remote team where 5 of us were sitting at this long desk, and we would just work remotely on people's PCs all the time. So I think that's where you saw a lot of it coming from. Whereas we've moved now to the space where you've got tools the likes of Zoom and Teams and Meet, where you've got so much functionality to it. Because, back in the day, you could see someone's screen, hopefully the mouse would move and your line would catch up because you're on a 56K modem.
Sure.
But now it's this beautiful, smooth transition into what we have now with Zoom, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, and I remember Nerd. There was some quite good marketing. It kind of grabbed the imagination, and I'm sure you guys were really busy because when they came out, there was really almost nobody else.
Yeah, no, so we were based out of Parkhurst, and even just judging by the buildings, it went from strength to strength to strength, and the remote team was fantastic. And we got to the point from being a small business to we were rolling out the whole of MTN's 3G when 3G was launched, which was great.
Wow. So within this, there must be an evolution of security as well. How has this moved in relation to presentations?
I think the security thing's an interesting aspect, because just as you start getting used to where security is and your securedness now, it moves on to the next space, and there's new threats and new all sorts. So it has evolved, and I think the way it's looking now is it almost looks like the security aspect is evolving faster than the platform aspect now. Yeah. We see what's happened with Zoom. We see all these things in the headlines and things like that. It's absolute madness as to how it's going forward. And I think one of the big things now is you can't claim that ignorance anymore now with the situation we're in, where everyone's remote now, where, oh, well, my IT guy will look after it.
Yeah.
We're all our IT guys now. So it's become a point where we have to evolve with it.
So very much so. And you have to be on top of things yourself, because there's quite a lot at stake. In fact, your brand can be severely damaged if you're not on top of your privacy. You in fact raised some concerns about Zoom about a month ago, but it seems as if a lot of those have been very quickly addressed. What is your feeling right now?
It has. I've got to applaud Zoom. They've taken a hell of a lot of flack in the last 2 months. But when last have you seen a company that would turn around from having that much flack to rolling out whole new versions, acquiring other companies and everything in the space of 37 days?
Yeah.
So they've been absolutely hell-bent on getting their security right. And, they took some, shall we say, development shortcuts to get the performance the way it is, but they've now resolved that further down the line. And, any company that's grown their client base by something like 5,000% in the space of 4 weeks is going to have some challenges along the way.
Well, the stats that I read was that from the end of December 2019 to the 1st of April 2020, the people that were actually using the platform, whether they had a paid account or no account, had gone up by apparently from 10 million users to 200 million users in just that space of time. Now, I'm sure that it's gone up exponentially since then.
Yeah, and the things that they're doing now, so that they were very clever in that they had security issues, they had key management issues, and they were taken to task by a lot of security researchers. And what they ended up doing now is buying Keybase, who specialize in this, and now they're rolling all of that into their software. So they are, I think, dealing with that massive expansion in a very cool way, in that they're bringing in these experts on it. Even if it's a case of mergers and acquisitions. But you can see the fruits of it now, because I think about 6 weeks ago, the banks banned Zoom, and now we're starting to see in the States that Zoom's being unbanned because of all these acquisitions and things like that. So it really is, it's moving quickly, very, very quickly. I mean, I wrote my article because there was so much false information out there, and this is what I do. Yeah. But it's moving so fast now, and I think you need people to aggregate that information together.
Absolutely. So for someone like myself, we do training, we do online seminars and what have you. What are the things, the main privacy and security concerns that I should watch out for now? What are the things that can still affect me?
Confidentiality remains confidentiality. And one of the key things, I think, with people moving to Zoom and these online platforms, if you're set up like me, I'm on speakers. I don't have a headset in my ears. People speaking can be heard throughout the house.
Yes.
So there's still that confidentiality aspect of it. So you've got to be aware of what kind of call you're going to be on. And should you be wearing a headset, or should you be in open air like this? But one of the other things is, if you look behind me, I've got a whiteboard up here. The amount of times that you see personal information on a whiteboard in an office is just crazy. There was a speaker that released a video a little while ago that was a very fun video about moving online and all of that. But on the whiteboard behind her was her, I think it was the phone number for her GP's office. It was the kids' school timetable, the Wi-Fi access code for the house. All this information sitting on the whiteboard in the background. So you've got to really pay attention to your background, your surroundings, and all of that to get that privacy aspect in. It's very easy for someone to take advantage of the space we're in and try and build a profile to try and take advantage of us.
Yeah,
then the more obvious ones are the...
Sorry, Ross, almost be quite deliberate in a sense, in terms of what you put there. For instance, you'll see here that I have a pig here, an orange pig. Its name is Priscilla. Now, I put Priscilla there on purpose because Priscilla enjoys my video conferences, and a lot of people have seen Priscilla on my videos. And if Priscilla weren't there, people would probably be upset. Look, I'm just kidding, obviously, but I think we need to be quite purposeful about what we have in our background. It's even an opportunity maybe to promote your book very quietly and very low key.
Yeah, I've seen that a number of times where folks will have promotional material somewhere in the study. But it's very key to really be aware. I mean, there's more obvious things like the whole Zoom bombing thing that we're seeing now. And I think just following best practices with meetings will sort you out there. So, Paul, you used a waiting room now before this. That's a great way of doing things. Having a password on the meeting, that's a great way of doing things. The thing is, we also need to be aware, as anyone hosting one of these things, you need to actually know how the tool works.
Yes.
What we're starting to see now is Zoom bombing, but done on meetings that do have passwords and waiting rooms. Yes. Because people are now looking out for free registrations, so they actually register in order to Zoom bomb, and then your password and your waiting room goes out the window.
Absolutely. So leading on from there, is there a silver bullet platform out there for online delivery? And if not, how would you select a platform?
So there are lots of really good platforms. I would not necessarily say that there's a silver bullet platform, because the platforms are designed differently. And I think one of the comparisons that's been made so much in the last 3 months, which is unfair, is comparing Teams to Meet to Zoom to Jammy, to all these different platforms where they actually have different base functions. So I think if you're using a platform, you need to be aware of what you're trying to get out of the platform. So if you are looking for breakout rooms and reactions and things like that, Zoom is your platform.
Yeah.
If you're looking for corporate, really secure discussions with maybe a whiteboard but no breakout rooms, Microsoft Teams could be perfect for you. Right. If you're looking for something that's simple and easy to use that anyone can log into, Google Meet is good for you because it's really simple and works in any browser. So it comes down to, again, knowing the tools that you're using and then just having the purpose that you want to use it for.
Absolutely. So now, Ross, you've also been known, apart from your privacy and your cybersecurity, as a bit of a tech freak or a tech geek, if you like, not a freak, a tech geek.
Maybe a little.
So tell us a bit about that. What would you recommend is adequate to put on a reasonable performance as a host in a video conference or webinar? What's the stuff you need?
So this is something I've been wrestling with for a little while now, and being part of a number of groups online and being part of a number of speakers associations, we get a lot of this feedback as to what we should have, what we shouldn't have, what we can, can't. And it's been really interesting hearing all of this stuff because you get people saying that you need 150,000 rands worth of equipment in order to do this properly. But I think for the main part, there are some really key, simple things that you need. One is good audio, because people tune out the second audio is bad. Your video production can be really not that great, but your audio better be good.
Yeah.
I was chatting to someone the other day who's in TV, and she was saying that it's with all of us working from home and things like that, and the likes of Trevor Noah and folks like that working from home, suddenly these massive production scale video things, we're realizing they're not as important. So I think it's very much a case of good audio or excellent audio, good video, but then knowing your tool. You need to have engagement. You need to be able to react on the fly if something goes wrong. And you can have a really, really good meeting with really basic stuff.
So what I'm really finding here is that very often the success of your meeting, and I agree with you that audio is really important. I'm using my external mic for the first time, and I think the result is probably better than it's been previously. But I think that there are other small things that one needs to do in order to make sure that one's meeting is successful. Now, one of the things that we did is we started 90 seconds after the scheduled time. In other words, people weren't kept waiting with a whole long thing for 15 minutes. And I think generally, most people, when they log into a video conference, they don't want to have the first quarter of an hour wasted, and particularly if you're going in there regularly. So I think these smaller things probably do make a big difference.
Yeah.
If my audio is going funny there.
No, crystal clear for me.
Is it still good? Okay. So I don't know if you agree with that, Ross.
Yeah, I do. I think we have to pay attention to the little things, like you say, because I mean, what used to be regional, where we would have access to what's happening in Joburg and Pretoria or Amsterdam or wherever we are, is now just global. So we've suddenly got this global noise of webinars and free this and free that and attend this, attend that. People's time is valuable. So, I mean, I've been on a webinar where the first 15 minutes was going through the award list that the speaker had, and I left the meeting because I'm not there to listen to an award list. But yes, it's the little things, and it's knowing how to manage them. And again, going back to the tech side, is knowing the tool you're in. And you know, everyone has got some friends that they can phone up, start up a meeting with 4 friends and play around with the different functions to get to know them. Right. Don't watch a YouTube video and assume that you know how the system works and then go into a live call.
Got you. So you're saying that your audio is your number one bit of equipment that you should get right, and that if you can afford a decent external mic, to perhaps invest in one.
Yeah, and you know, you can get some really good external mics that won't break the bank either. Where you can buy something that is not a Rode or a Shure or something like that. You can get really good equipment that's not hugely overpriced. But if you think of a laptop and things like that, a laptop is built to be small. So the components are these tiny little components, and they're not necessarily the best components.
No.
Whereas an average external mic could be way better than a laptop's mic.
So your second most important bit of information, would, or at least of equipment, would that be, in fact, your computer?
Yes, with the caveat of knowing what you're doing with it. You can get away with a computer that's a lower spec, providing you know what you're doing and you know how your system works. If you've got a lower spec machine, close everything else that you've got open before you go into a meeting.
Right.
Like there's the basics of closing things like Skype or Teams or something that's going to beep when you're in a meeting. But there's also closing heavy applications that you've got running. Don't have Outlook open when you're in a meeting, things like that.
So generally the advice that I give is an hour before the meeting, you should actually shut down your computer because it forces you to close all the apps that you don't need. And when it boots up again and you open Zoom, then it'll tell you if it wants to install an update. And I'd rather do that an hour before than 10 minutes before my session starts.
Absolutely. I would even hazard check your updates and everything the day before, because if something goes wrong with a full update, you've got problems.
Absolutely. Now, folks, I've got one more question I want to ask Ross, but before I get there, Ross has indicated that he's very happy to take some questions. So if you wouldn't mind putting your questions in the chat box, it just makes it quite a lot easier. Or if there is a lull in the conversation, unmute yourself and dive in there. But I will read out the questions. And for those that need to leave at 4:30, we won't take offense. But if you want to stay on beyond 4:30, Ross will remain until all the questions are asked, which is very generous of him. Thank you, Ross. So here's my last question that I want to ask you. What are some of the top tips that you can give on safeguarding your privacy in a remote platform?
I would say use the safety features that are designed in that platform.
Yeah.
Pretty much every platform has safety features in it. And a lot of them are the same. It's not unique for Zoom. We just see Zoom a lot in the news. Most of the platforms have waiting rooms, have passwords for attendance, things like that. Make use of them. That's why they are there. The next thing I would say is a lot of the platforms let you use what in Skype or what in Zoom has a personal meeting ID. Don't use a personal meeting ID. That's where the meeting ID is the same from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. Anyone who's joined your meeting previously can accidentally click on it and join into a new meeting, and that can be disastrous. So you want to have a unique meeting ID for every meeting going forward.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing is sort of a good advice for anyone using a computer is have a secure password and make sure your
Okay, we've just lost you there a second, Ross. Do you want to maybe just try and make that point
was
again?
hacked or Teams was hacked. It's just a case of a password that you've used somewhere else that's been used.
Okay, Ross, we didn't hear that last bit. Would you mind just repeating it for us? You froze for a moment.
Sure. So the big thing is having a good password. So if you are using Zoom and you've got a password to log into the Zoom platform or the Teams platform or something like that, have a good password set that's different to other services that you use. What happens is you can have these other services that get hacked and then someone captures that password there and they go try it on Zoom and Teams and Office 365. And wherever they can get in, they will reset your password and then you can't get back into your own service. And then there's a whole can of worms.
Wow. So the password being different from your meeting ID.
Yes, so you've got your meeting room password, but then you've got your password to actually sign into Zoom where you schedule your meetings and things like that. Have that password really secure. You don't want someone scheduling meetings as you and then trying to extort information out of people or anything like that.
Okay. So Ross, we've got a comment here from Marie Ann. She says that she's using her iPad Pro or iPhone for all virtual meetings. Now, I would assume that's okay for a participant, but maybe a bit risky for a host. What's your comment? Okay, Ross, you seem to have frozen again.
and expect the unexpected.
All right. So, Ross, we didn't hear that whole bit. Do you want to just say it again?
There was no whole bit there. I actually disconnected, but it's expect the unexpected. So my LTE had to kick in for a second there.
Okay. So you heard what I just asked now.
I didn't hear what you just asked. The first I
Okay,
heard
so
was I missed.
Marie Ann said, I'm using my iPad Pro or iPhone for all virtual meetings. So my comment would be, that's fine if you're a participant, but maybe a bit risky if you're a host.
Yeah, the iPad devices and the Apple devices in general are actually really good. The microphones that are supplied with the little Apple headset that you get is actually phenomenal for using in a call. The only thing I would say with iPads and things like that is where you put them. So if you are going to use an iPad, it's very easy to have it on the desk in front of you and you bend down over it, and then everyone's got a fantastic view of your nostrils, and that's what you don't want.
Absolutely.
You need to have the correct placement for it as well.
Fantastic. So folk, just a reminder to you, if you've got any other questions that you want to fire at Ross, either on cybersecurity or on any tech questions, even if it's fairly basic tech. I think what I liked was your message about not getting yourself too overwhelmed by the tech, because very often you give yourself too much to do. And that if one can keep it simple, there are other things that are perhaps more important, like just, being nice and personable, chatting to people in a friendly way, welcoming them from the waiting room, those kinds of things, rather than getting too overwhelmed with your own fantastic tech. And also, having some kind of decision about whether you're going to be standing or sitting. And if you are going to be standing, there are certain things that you need to bear in mind. You might be a little bit far away from your computers, and you need to have the kind of setup that can accommodate that.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned that. I've actually gone and done a survey now over the last few days of all my clients, because I'm very curious about the sitting or standing thing. And it seems that out of the responses I've received, about 90% prefer seated, which was interesting. And they were saying it's much more engaging being right here as opposed to standing up or swaying or moving around, whereas this is much more personal, and I'm with you guys. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question with regarding doing or getting evaluations. Let's say you do a virtual session, or let's say it's a short training session like a seminar, and the organizer would like evaluations afterwards on a few things like how did they find the presenter, how did they find the seminar, and so on and so forth. Is there a way of doing that within the virtual platforms, or do you need to design something on SurveyMonkey and send it through to them?
It depends on the platform you're using, and also the level that you're subscribed to on the platform. So, and again, I go back to what I was saying about things being fit for purpose. Zoom's a very interesting example because it's now blurring the lines between the different purposes between webinar and conference. Because previously it's been this case, you've got a webinar where it's just the presenter, it's designed as a classroom, whereas now this is a lot more interactive, but people are using it as an alternative to webinar, the traditional webinar kind of thing. Now, in those webinar platforms, generally it's completely built in that when you close your browser, you're going to get this summary and feedback form and things like that, whereas Zoom perhaps doesn't so much, but you can set up in your Zoom settings to have a closing page show up. So you can put information in there too. Whereas it might be some cases that you would use a Google form, or in Teams, if you have regular Teams, you can use a form that's built into Teams as an ongoing thing. There's different things on different platforms, but Google Forms is really easy. And it's pretty universal that people can use it. However, take a look at the platform first.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you just my own last question. If you had to give people that are new to hosting video conferences or webinars one absolutely key piece of advice, perhaps the most important thing that they need to do, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
I would say practice or play, break things. Coming from an IT and a software background, one of the things you do in testing is you are literally there to break things.
Yeah.
So go and see what works, see what breaks things. And if you break things, you've done your job right as a tester and you know what not to do. Most of IT is just knowing what not to do. So you go practice, get your friends, log onto a Zoom call, and bugger around. I've got a couple of speakers where we've joined these Facebook Messenger groups with their platform now that they want to rival Zoom with.
Yeah.
And we can join up and play so that we know what the platform looks like before we go into it. Don't go in blind. Going in blind is dangerous.
So in a sense, you're almost saying that a sense of familiarity with the platform is really helpful, and it helps you to relax and just get a bit of an instinctive feel when you're in your video conference or webinar.
Yeah. If you've seen something break before, you don't panic as much because you know it's not the end of the world, I think. So you can, if you've played with knowing how to mute someone joins in and they're loud, you can mute someone. And it's all knowing that those little things up front, and you can do that by playing.
Yeah, so this is the fourth video conference that I'm holding on a Monday at 4 p.m. And the very first one was Ian Hatton, and I forgot to record it. And that was just being slightly overwhelmed by all the things that I had to remember and the timing and what have you. So we went back, and a few days later, we just re-recorded it, and the recording is there for people to listen to. So I think just one of the things I want to mention to everyone is that if you've missed any of the previous ones, the first one was Ian Hatton. Then we had Alan Stevens. Ian was speaking about engaging your audience. Alan was speaking about the history and the future of video conferencing. And then Nikki Abdenour, who's on this call today, she's probably about to leave, but she chatted about creating a positive mindset for your online conferences. So the recordings are all there to go and listen to. So if you're unable to join us at 4 p.m., then you can always go back and look at them. So we're on 4:30. This is our formal close, but if there is anyone who would like to ask a question, we'll stay open for another minute or two, or however long it takes. But just from my side, Ross, that's been pretty fascinating. I think that a lot of people were a little bit shaky about Zoom when all the bad publicity came out just over a month ago. But it sounds to me as if they've pretty much put a lid on most of it.
Yeah, they have. They've been really, really impressively active at resolving this, and even to the degree that their CEO is writing the press releases now for everything that goes up. He's also hosting Ask Me Anything sessions where you can go and ask the CEO what's happening. So they've been really good at addressing it.